Is it recording?
Nagrywa się? Nagrywa się.
It is recording. Xiaomi 15 Ultra, the phone that I bought just before going to Szczecin. So I'm recording this review at the hotel. And you will mainly have photos and videos from Szczecin. What I can say right away, after these few days of using this phone, it's exceptionally handy, considering its capabilities and the hardware it has. It's exceptionally handy, almost compact. Great. In this regard, surpasses Vivo. For example, with Vivo, I have a problem that when I am wearing a suit, it bulges my pocket. But even when I put it in the inside pocket, it tends to weigh the pocket down because it is too short. Maybe it's a flaw in the suit. Which one should have deeper pockets? But it is what is. However, this is a smaller phone, and yet we still have top hardware. Camera bump. So we have a telephoto lens with a sensor as large as in Vivo. This is exactly the same sensor. Its size is 1 divided by 1.4 inches. Sensor is the same. However, the optics has a greater magnification because this is probably 4.3. I'll check it right away. 4.3 optical zoom. However, in Vivo, in front of this sensor, we have a lens with a 3.7 zoom. A small difference. But no matter, the photos are phenomenal in both cases. Of course, there are some differences when it comes to software. And I'll discuss it in detail later. This smartphone is, of course, the global version, so he fully supports all Google services. Vivo also supports, but for example, voice activation of the assistant. Okay, Google, it's not working. Meanwhile, here, as you can see, it works. We need to turn this off now because I have Gemini on. Okay. Everything works here. Besides that, I have a feeling that the call quality is higher. Probably because voice over Wi-Fi is working here. Here's an icon that confirms it for me. Anyway, the quality of this speaker for calls is great. So a very clear sound. Also records great sound in videos. But I will discuss this when I display the video to you. Do I have anything else to tell you? Probably not. Overall, I have a very good impression of this phone. Let's get to the meat of the matter. So for photos and videos. First, I will show you some photos from the main lens. 23 millimeters, which is quite wide, although it is now standard. On the other hand, a large sensor with a size of 1 inch is not standard. These parameters allow you to capture a lot of light and take good photos even in poor lighting conditions. Like here in the hotel corridor, where the light was supposed to create an atmosphere rather than provide good conditions for taking photos. The photo did not capture the effect intended by the interior designer. The exposure, meaning the amount of light the camera lets onto the sensor, seems too high in this case, making the photo, in my opinion, too bright. The amount of detail that the camera captured in these conditions is impressive. However, it will be more difficult in the case of the next photo. I decided to put Xiaomi to a very big test. And it's not about the mess in my room, but the twilight that prevails in it. The result, although it may not seem impressive, is actually exceptionally good if we compare it with the capabilities of another device with worse parameters, such as the iPhone 16 Pro. But enough about how big the sensor is or how bright the lens is. The next photos. Here, pay attention to the slightly enhanced colors because, out of the two available color profiles, I chose vibrant. Flowers and brick facade stand out more. The next picture, however, something else stands out. The contrast seems too high, the camera uses HDR sparingly, and bright sections in the background appear almost overexposed. Now, there will be a series of photos. From the super wide-angle lens at the moment to digital zooms from the strongest telephoto lens we have on board Xiaomi. The strong sun reflecting off the bright orange facade was almost blinding. You can see it in the photo, although many might argue that the exposure is too high again. In this case, I'm in favor of realism, so I like Xiaomi's approach. Let's get back to the ultra-wide-angle lens and take a look at the left edge of the frame in the shadow. No noise and great details in this light. Main lens. Exposure as bright as with the ultra-wide angle. In the shadow at the edge of the frame, great sharpness and a lot of details. We are approaching the facade with a hanging lamp. First telephoto lens, 3 times magnification. The exposure is clearly lower, making the facade color shade darker. This telephoto lens has less brightness, which in these conditions makes it easier for the camera to control the light. Maybe it was not realism, but rather a certain lack of refinement due to the fact that Xiaomi 14 Ultra does not have a variable aperture on the main lens. Another telephoto lens with 4.3 times magnification. Great quality, and let's see how many details of the lamp will be visible when we look even closer at this picture. Pay attention to the glass. It's filled with smooth circles inside. If we compare this photo to a close-up image, we will see that the circles are not smooth. Artificial intelligence has smoothed them for us, often deceiving us while enhancing the photos. Regarding artificial intelligence, in the next photo, which is also a close-up, it will beautifully smooth the street name sign and the wall, like a painting. Photo in authentic mode. And this is the vibrant mode, as you see. Everything is smooth. This is how artificial intelligence works. Now, I will show how the photos come out in portrait mode, taken with the Xiaomi 15 Ultra. First, the main lens. The bokeh effect looks natural. Good separation of the photographed person from the background. Then, a portrait using a telephoto lens with 3 times zoom. Great quality in imperfect lighting conditions. Close-up 3.7 times bokeh effect or background blur. Stronger. Also, good quality. Overall, very good photos. Lots of details. The only thing that sometimes worries me are the strange skin tones, which may be partly due to the color profile of my current phone, Vivo X100 Ultra. Sometimes also, when using a stronger Xiaomi telephoto lens, the photo may be blurred. You'll see this in the example of a frame from 3 photos. First photo zoom, 3 times. Strong contrast image. The second photo taken with a lens zoomed in 4.3 times is unfortunately clearly blurry. The third photo was taken using my main smartphone, which is the Vivo X100 Ultra. You can clearly see a different approach to skin tones, as well as more intense control of light clipping. Not delving into comparing Xiaomi and Vivo right now. 15 Ultra takes great portrait photos. I don't see any tendency to smooth faces. The photos are detailed and natural. Precise bokeh effect. Unlike most competitors, thanks to the large sensor behind the telephoto lens, we can also use the zoom in lower indoor lighting conditions, obtaining sharp, detailed, and noise-free images. The selfie camera takes decent photos, sometimes even in high-contrast situations. When the face is in shadow, the face has a distinctly green tint, but usually the colors and amount of details are good. The wide-angle lens has decent quality. With enough light, the photos are quite detailed and sharp. Everything, of course, within the standards to which smartphone manufacturers have accustomed us, who consider these lenses to be of little importance. Xiaomi in ultra-wide photos intensely controls noise in low-light situations. At night, the photos are still smooth, but completely lack details. Well, it's similar to other flagships, which means sufficient and nothing more. Let's stick to night photos, because I will now show you how the different lenses perform in these conditions. The first lens we just discussed blurred the details as expected. The main lens, on the other hand, performs at a level consistent with its league, which is the premier class of phones with a 1-inch sensor. A huge amount of detail and great sharpness. The first telephoto lens takes surprisingly good photos in these conditions, even though the sensor is not as large as in the second telephoto lens with greater zoom. This might happen due to the high relative brightness of 1.8. The second telephoto lens with a 4.3 times zoom and a sensor size of 1/1.4 is currently a top-notch design. A combo known from phones like the Vivo X100 Ultra, Vivo X200 Pro, or the latest X200 Ultra. We won't find a better periscope camera in a smartphone than this one. But the Xiaomi software still needs some polishing. The telephoto lens in Xiaomi knocks out phones from the Samsung or Pixel stable, but slightly loses to Vivo. That's it for the photos. Let's move on to the videos. Let's start with a selfie.
Jest tu całkiem głośno, bo stoję nad ulicą dosyć ruchliwą. Funkcja automatycznej filtracji dźwięku jest w tej chwili wyłączona.
The picture is very good, and the sound is great, considering how well the voice can be heard against the background of a busy street.
Inteligentna redukcja szumu Vivo włączona. O, nareszcie. Nadjeżdżają samochody. Nawet tramwaj jedzie, więc teraz to będziecie... O, dobrze jest. Teraz będziecie widzieć lub słyszeć, że coś tutaj działa.
Noise reduction is very delicate, but the voice against a busy street is very audible. As a vlogging camera, we can also use the main camera. It has a large sensor, so you can clearly see the bokeh effect. Simply put, the sensor is big enough that when the main object is close, the background becomes blurry. It's a really nice effect. The quality in this light seems good, stabilization as well. Skin tones are unorthodox but acceptable. But now, let's take a break from my face and move on to recording other things with the main camera. It was before I found the sun in Szczecin. And in these lighting conditions, which were quite dim, we have a preview of what appears when filming at night. Namely, electronic stabilization is not perfect. It has significant flaws that become apparent, especially when there is less light. It is not well visible on the small screen, but it became evident when I watched the recording on the large screen of the television. In the case of a small phone screen, you won't see this effect, but at night, you'll see it regardless of the display size. Therefore, if we compared the recording quality of the Xiaomi 15 Ultra phone with the Vivo X100 Ultra, it is worse in terms of stabilization than the Vivo X100 Ultra, which has already had many camera software updates. Electronic stabilization occurs after recording the video, so there still might be a lot of improvements here. The software of this phone is still new. As for optical and digital zoom, both cameras, Vivo and Xiaomi, are great and absolutely outshine the iPhone. The iPhone 16 Pro, which has a telephoto lens with 6 times zoom, has a small sensor, so the image in worse conditions than here, where there is full sun, will be weaker. So let's get out of this sun and enter the twilight zone. Pay attention to the jello effect during vibrations. It looked good during the filming of this video, but after post-processing, the jello effect appears. This is clearly related to digital stabilization. For comparison, the same moment recorded by Vivo. We are going back to the recording with Xiaomi 15 Ultra, which compared to Vivo, obviously has a narrower frame. This means that electronic stabilization is implemented much more aggressively. But let's not rush through this Xiaomi review. I also recorded a video at night with 60 frames per second and, of course, in 4K. I usually don't record at such high FPS because the camera reduces it to 24 FPS in low light conditions anyway. And what a difference. Anyway, see for yourselves. Electronic stabilization was set aside. It's better. Maybe because the processor is busy with other things at such high quality and doesn't have time to mess around. With this positive discovery, I conclude the review of the Xiaomi 15 Ultra phone's camera and move on to the interface and user experience. We open the camera. We see references to individual lenses as well as to beautifying filters whose intensity we can control. References to 2-color profiles, which are Leica Authentic and Leica Vibrant. A link to Google Lens. Mode for using the camera to photograph fast-moving objects. Operating mode of the illuminator diode. Enabling the effect of live photos. At the top, there's a link to further settings. HDR, super macro, aspect ratio, timer, watermark. Possibility of modifying exposure, which may be useful. After entering the settings, we can modify many aspects of video recording and taking photos. From format settings, 4 levels of photo quality, sound profile in the video, or which priority for exposure settings the face has. And this is just a scratch on the surface of what we can modify in this camera. The whole thing works smoothly. Photos and videos save at a good speed. Once I had a restart while using the camera, I forgive it since it's a new phone. The phone also has many useless AI functions for an average person, but it can also summarize an article open in the browser and describing how a terrible illness is afflicting one of the Polish celebrities, causing her to lose sight, hearing. Usually we would only find this out after scrolling through a mile of the page, but the outline in the first point tells us that it's a migraine. It's good to have AI on the phone. There are a gazillion functions, but I limited myself to enabling Google Gemini. I tried to create a transcript of my conversation with my wife, but it turned out to be some nonsense. Gallery app works very well. Photos and videos are clearly sorted. We can connect the Google Photos service to the native app and synchronize media with the cloud. saving phone memory at the same time. The whole interface works smoothly. There is no question of lagging. I did not notice any overheating problem even when I used the camera heavily. The shock could be felt due to increased usage from continuously using the device. Oh, hello. Spring in full swing. Xiaomi is no longer with me. I left Vivo because it is simply better. And why it is better will be justified soon when I generally tell whether buying the Xiaomi 15 Ultra makes sense, and I will not read this script anymore. I'll just say the speaker sounds good, the audio is loud, but it doesn't have a narrow range, and it isn't annoying. The screen, by the way, is also great in full sunlight. And when it comes to design, the case is transparent, wonderfully rounded at the edges where the sun reflects. Of course, when it happens to be shining, creating an impression as if the phone is illuminated with LEDs, modern light design, and so on. Design is not important. For me, I already said that the phone fits well in the hand, and that's enough about the design. Is it worth buying the Xiaomi 15 Ultra? I absolutely think so. This is a top flagship, and this phone, in terms of photography capabilities, beats iPhones, Samsungs, and Pixels. Mainly with what? Mainly a huge sensor that is in the telephoto lens, and the image quality that this sensor generates. This is Samsung HP9, as I mentioned at the beginning. It is much better than what Honor 7 Pro offers, which also has a large sensor. But it is not the same quality. Here I rely on the opinion of others because, since I haven't got my hands on the Honor 7 yet, but I will get it, and then we will see how it performs. Besides that, in Xiaomi we also have one intentional sensor in the main camera, and it also matters. Xiaomi 15 Ultra simply has this photography package and at the same time full Google support, especially the voice assistant, which we can activate with a voice command when the screen is off. I don't know if you use it, but more and more people are starting to use it, and I recommend this feature. When you're driving, you can receive text messages and reply. I mainly use it when I'm riding an electric unicycle, so for me, it's an important option. As for the camera, I still need to mention the issue related to skin tones. I didn't want to criticize this camera because it's not worth it. It's a great camera, but the skin tones are unnatural to me and irritate me. And if they annoy me, it undermines the main reason for having a phone with such a large camera island. That means the ability to take good pictures of my children, mainly using portrait mode. Some photos look great. Some of them, taking skin tones into account, look average. But sometimes it happens that the face looks as if it were a geisha mask, as if there was a thick base, and the face is deathly pale. Strange aesthetics, or rather an evident mistake. This appeared to me a few times, mostly when I was taking pictures of my friends and didn't post them because, you know, privacy and so on. If any of them agree, I might add such a picture at the end. So this is the error. Another thing is the stabilization of the telephoto lens and blurred photos. Xiaomi clearly has a problem with this, and it's also something to keep in mind. I hope that Xiaomi will fix it, though. The sound is great. Recording voice while walking or driving. Even with high background noise, it works great. In this respect, Xiaomi absolutely wins over Vivo. There is no doubt here. As for the quality of photos taken with the Xiaomi telephoto lens, when they come out well, meaning they are not blurry or have a geisha effect, they are at the level of Vivo. And I would even say that they are sometimes a bit better, because Xiaomi doesn't smooth the skin like Vivo does. So this camera is for someone with photographic ambitions, or children, and wants to capture various moments related to their growing up. It makes sense if someone needs support from Google Assistant. If not, you might consider bringing a Vivo phone from China. That's it. Listen up. You have to decide for yourselves. See you.
Dobra, czy to się w ogóle nagrało? Chyba tak. Dobrze.